It's my pleasure at this time to introduce two exceptional gentlemen who are taking time out of their schedule to be here with you this morning. Their presentation is called KINDSIGHT, and I think you're going to find it very inspiring and also very interesting as well. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Dvorak and Mr. Robert Zuckerman. So let's give them a warm Rio Rancho High School welcome.
Thank you. It's a privilege and pleasure to be with you here this morning. I'm Doug Dvorak. Let's give a big shout out to Mr. Duncan for making all this happen, and to Intel. Thank you. You know, I speak about 100 times a year all around the world, and whenever I go into a city, I get a copy of the local newspaper, and what I'm really amazed at, but more importantly, distraught at, and at times depressed, is when I get into a city and I see that there's been another shooting of 5 people. And I think the world is crying out right now for more positive people like you, and what you're doing here at Rio Rancho, giving back to the community, paying it forward. So what we're going to talk about today is sort of to underscore your mantra as Rio Rancho Rams, which is respect, achievement, motivation, spirit. But I'd like to add one more: kindness. And one of the takeaways from today's presentation is I'd like you to build an ARK daily, A-R-K. Most of you are an act of random kindness. I think the world, the planet, the universe is crying out for more positive people doing nice things and paying it forward. So I had the opportunity to practice an act of random kindness about 2 years ago, and it sort of changed the trajectory or focus of my life when in Chicago I met Robert Zuckerman, and I'd like to introduce him through a few videos.
KINDSIGHT project is using photography and text, pictures and words, to celebrate and illuminate the richness of everyday life. Random encounters with people, but how life can be rich just by stopping and talking.
I wanted to see KINDSIGHT in action. So, we met up with Robert in Manhattan, where he was working on a new movie for Walt Disney Pictures called Sorcerer's Apprentice, starring Nicolas Cage. We started at a falafel stand.
So long. Yeah, my name is Robert. Very good, how are you? Can I make a photo with you? What? Okay. If they don't want to make a photo, I never do it. I always ask. And that's part of what I taught, we work with the kids on too. I say, you know, if they don't want it, respect people. So cut.
Undaunted, we continued our KINDSIGHTing mission, all the way around the corner, to a curious store that sells belts, socks, shirts, and Kung Fu DVDs.
My name is Robert, and I'm just here in town. I do photography on the movies, but I also have this book that I do, and they're doing a little story on me. And the book is about everyday life. What I do is I make a photo, and then I tell a little story about the people. So I make a photo, and it just could be like you and me having a conversation, you know? So is it okay if I make a photograph for you guys?
Whatever you want.
And then, yeah, and then what I'll do is maybe I'll write a story about you and I'll bring it back here.
No problem.
Beautiful. And then one last one here. Okay, and 1, 2, and... Well, that worked out.
Success. KINDSIGHT prevailed.
Yeah, that's how it's done. Basically, just a moment that opens up into a connection. And I have to tell you that pretty much everyone in that book, strangers that I've met, I've stayed in touch with, and I consider my friends.
Hello, my name is Jeff Goldblum, and we're introducing Robert Zuckerman. You're about to hear Robert Zuckerman, my friend. We met on a TV show, Dare 5. He was so impressive right away, so striking, and smart, kind, generous, sweet. I recommend seeing his KINDSIGHT series. His writing is inspirational, motivational, expanding, transformational, delightful, and his pictures and sense of people and how we're all connected is always right up my alley. Robert Zuckerman, a magical
Thanks.
So the KINDSIGHT program really underscores and trying to discover the richness in everyday life through the lens and pen of Robert. And he's compiled a series of wonderful pictures and narratives in a book that we're going to give to Mr. Duncan here. But what we're going to do for the next 30 or 40 minutes is just interview style, take you through some of these pictures that are just amazing. I had the opportunity to meet Robert 2 years ago. I was having dinner in Chicago, and on a rare occasion I like to have a cigar. So as I walked out the restaurant going to the cigar store next to me, I saw Robert Zuckerman for the first time in a scooter. Obviously he had some disabilities, but he just looked like he was one with the universe. And he had all these plastic identification tags on him. So I introduced myself, said, "Hi, I'm Doug. I'm just going to go next door and get a cigar." And he said, "Well, when you go next door, look above the clerk and you'll see this picture of Cigar Aficionado magazine with Arnold Schwarzenegger." "I took that picture," he said. I was amazed. So we got to talking, and Robert, as he often does through his spirit and kindness, took a picture of me. It's always unique, and this was up against the neon lights of the cigar shop. So that was my first encounter with Robert, paying it forward, an act of random kindness that changed my life, the trajectory, and Robert and I now are lifelong friends and good buddies, and we travel the world doing this presentation. This is just an idea of some of the Hollywood personalities, directors that he does. Robert is a still photographer in the movie business, and we're going to walk you through some of these stories. Robert, take us through this picture and what happened here.
Well, this was during the filming of Terminator 3 in 2002, and one day I had a little photo set up with lights and a background there, and I was going to photograph Arnold Schwarzenegger and the actress from the movie. Her name is Kristanna Loken. She played the evil Terminator, so I got to do them standing back to back. Well, she was still off getting her makeup done, so one of Arnold's assistants, another German bodybuilder named Dieter, said, "You know, you're always behind the camera. Get in there." And he grabbed my camera from me and he asked me to stand, back to back with Arnold. So we did that. Now I had this picture for maybe 5 years, and I realized that there was something wrong with it. So I did. This is the before version.
And I also understand that Arnold gave you some workout advice, and you started pumping iron.
Well, I started pumping iron and taking a lot of vitamins, and that's anyway. And it's a little vitamin called Photoshop, actually. But anyway.
Take us through these two pictures. You had indicated last time you were in Albuquerque was 76 or 77.
I was a student in college in 1977, and I was driving cross country from California to the East Coast. And I was in, this was Albuquerque, and this was a time when these movies that you see on here, this was when they were all first coming out. So Star Wars, Saturday Night Fever, and Charlie Brown and the Bad News Bears. So it's a little bit of the history right here. But this is Albuquerque. This is also Albuquerque. I don't know the street, but some may recognize it. But this was also 1977. So that was the last time I was here before this great day.
You've got a very special relationship with Will Smith.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, and what's the backstory behind this photo?
This was something, every year in Miami, Florida, they have a big event called Art Basel. Art Basel is when art galleries from all over the world come, and it's a big convention, and people are selling artwork and stuff. And I had a gallery set up there this year, and one day Will Smith came by, and he brought his son, who's standing on his left, it's our right. That's his oldest son, Trey, from his first marriage, who is now a professional DJ. So this was just that Sunday in the gallery. And on the other side of me, to my right, to our left, is a friend of mine, Joseph Crutel, who is also known as Mr. Miami, because he knows everybody in the world. And Stacy Margulies. Anyway, this was the poster shoot for the movie Pursuit of Happiness. I started telling a story about this before, which I won't tell the whole story, but Will Smith requested me to do this photograph, and I flew up to Oakland, California, and did this photo of him and his son Jaden, and it became a very widely respected and known because it was very effective in bringing the ultimate goal of a movie poster is to draw people into seeing a movie. And I was told that this was very effective into giving the story and making people want to see the film.
My understanding, you're contracted to shoot still photos on the movie set. But in addition to the contract, you have separate language or an agreement that if they use your photos for the poster, and this was the worldwide poster, you also get a nice paycheck, is that correct?
Right, well this was even a different thing than that. If I'm on the movie set every day, that's called the still photographer, but then they also sometimes bring in a big name photographer to do a separate photo shoot for the poster. So in this case, I was that guy. I got requested by Will Smith, the studio flew me in and you know, made a lot of good money on that one.
I love this picture of his wife.
Yeah.
Tell us how you achieved this without Photoshop.
This was actually at their house, and they wanted me to do some family photos. So I went to their house one Saturday afternoon, and this was through the front door of their house. So what you're seeing is the reflections that are in the glass, and at the same time seeing Will and Jada through the glass. And they wrote me a nice note because they liked the way that made them feel, and it kind of, you know, conveyed what their relationship is, their togetherness. So that's another goal of photography, is to make pictures that give people good feeling and that they can value for a long time. And I'm sure all of you have like family photos that go back, you know, your own family photos and generations, so photos are very important in people's lives. That's the director Michael Bay, who directed all the Transformers movies. And this was at the Edwards Air Force Base out in the desert in California. And
You also have a very special relationship with Denzel Washington.
yeah.
You know, People Magazine, the National Enquirer, TMZ, they seem to have a lot of news and noise about, and it's not always good news, it's generally the dirt on
Gossip,
celebrities,
yeah.
gossip. Tell us the story that didn't make it into the news with Denzel. I think it speaks to his character and the type of individual he is, and he actually practiced paying it forward, building an act of random kindness day.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I had done this movie Training Day with Denzel, and this, by the way, this is a case, another case, what you spoke of, where a photograph from the day-to-day photos on the set became the poster. And this photograph was made on the very first morning of filming in downtown Los Angeles, and it became the poster for the movie. But at any rate, I was getting ready to do another movie with Denzel called Deja Vu, which was filmed in New Orleans in 2006. So it was 5 years after this. And before I went down there, a friend of my mom's emailed me an article from the newspaper in San Antonio, Texas. And it was an article about how Denzel and his wife were touring the grounds of a burn unit down there for burned soldiers coming back from Iraq. And as they were walking around the grounds, the administrator was telling Denzel and his wife how they were short on beds. They didn't have enough beds to accommodate all the people coming in, all the wounded soldiers. So Denzel took out his checkbook and he wrote a check for an entire new building to be built. I think it was like $3 or $4 million. So, and it's not something you really hear about that he just seeks publicity for, he just did it.
Great.
You guys know who that is? Who is that? Snoop Dogg. This was also during the filming of Training Day, and it was just during Training Day, they did a lot of the filming in downtown LA, out in the streets. And everywhere they went, everywhere and every day, everyone would be calling, Denzel, Denzel. And he just, you know, everyone wanted to see him. The only time Denzel got a break from all the attention were the 3 days that Snoop was working on the film. Then everyone was just, you know, after Snoop. And that's me. And this is with some like really hardcore gangbangers down in the streets of South Central LA. I was pretending to be a gangbanger.
But you had a special relationship, and you were really able to reach these young men because they called you Picture Man, and you'd get up at like 3 or 4 in the morning and just go out and take pictures of them.
Yeah.
That was really kind of cool.
It was nice, you know, because it's one of the great things about photography, especially out in the streets or, you know, meet people, is with the KINDSIGHT project that Doug talked about, is giving people recognition. And people like to be acknowledged and be recognized, and so that's a big part of what this was. Jamie Foxx. This is a movie called Redemption that he did in 2003, where he was playing a man named Tookie Williams, who was the founder of the Crips, which is a very hardcore gang in Los Angeles. And should I tell them the Jamie Foxx story?
Sure.
So anyway, sometime before they actually make the movie, they do a promo. They do like a 2-minute, it's like a commercial for the movie. And before they were going up, they were going to film this in Toronto, but down in Los Angeles, they were going to film a promo before the movie. And it was a very hot summer day in July. And Jamie had just finished working on Ray before that, so he wasn't in the best shape. And of course, Tookie Williams, if anyone knows, he was in jail and he was a bodybuilder, really not an ounce of body fat, very hardcore. So Jamie, was a little self-conscious because he hadn't gotten back in shape yet. And the director of the promo was a very, very talented artist, but he was also, just kind of a flamboyant guy. And he said, "Oh, well, we'll have you take your shirt off and you can be sexy Jamie Foxx." And Jamie did not like that at all, because he wasn't in shape. So he was getting ready to leave and just walk off the set, and they were all in his trailer trying to calm him down. All the executives from the network were there. And at one point, I was inside the jail, and I walked out onto the loading dock, and I was like visible through the window, and Jamie Foxx said to all his executives, "I hate all white people." And then he pointed to me, he goes, "Except that guy, Robert Zuckerman." And so that was my kind of good moment with the network. So,
How about this?
do anyone know who this is?
Anyone know who this is?
A little before your time. David Bowie?
David Bowie.
You heard David Bowie? He was a famous, rock artist from the 1960s and 70s. Okay, before your time. Next. This is also a famous jazz musician named Herbie Hancock. And I was in the studio at like 4 o'clock in the morning one day.
What I really like about this is it's through glass and it shows the reflection of the LED lights off the mixing board. Tell the backstory here, unbeknownst to Herbie, who was coming in to also perform in the session.
Well, Herbie was recording an album called Gershwin's World, and he was doing a lot of jazz classics from this guy named George Gershwin. And it was about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and what he did not know was that they had planned to sneak Stevie Wonder into the studio. So while he's in this booth recording, they snuck Stevie Wonder into another booth, and when Stevie started playing the harmonica and Herbie heard it, he just kind of lit up and smiled. So that was that story.
This photo that you took has generated tens of thousands of dollars for juvenile diabetes as well as AIDS. Tell us the backstory, it's fascinating. Any of you know who this is?
Any guesses? Anyone want to take a wild guess?
Tony Montana?
Anyone know the
Scarface?
That's Al Pacino.
Al Pacino.
But this was during the filming of a movie called Any Given Sunday. Who knows Any Given Sunday? Raise your hands if you know. The football movie with Jamie Foxx. Okay, and this on the movie sets they have these big white sheets that are stretched out on a frame. They call them silks. They're like maybe 12 feet by 12 feet, and they shine a light through it, and so it gives a very soft light. So the movie crew was filming from the other side where Al was lit by this big sheet, but behind him, against the sheet, he became the silhouette, and I thought it looked really cool. So when they finished filming this scene, and they yelled cut, I said, "Al, can you just sit there for a minute and just puff on your cigar and let me get a few shots of you?" Well, Al is not really known for liking random artistic moments. I mean, if it's for the movie, for the promo, he'll do it. But this was just, art. So he let me do about 3 or 4 frames, and he got up and left. But when he saw the photo, he really liked it a lot. And then, like Doug said, I've been able to donate it to different charity benefits, like diabetes research and AIDS, and it's raised a lot of money by being donated and sold in charity.
Yeah, great story. Now,
anybody know who that is?
anybody know who this is?
This was my very first job in 1990 on a film set.
A very young
Who knows who it is? Say.
George Clooney.
That's
George Clooney.
All right,
Very good.
So, yeah. 1990, before he cut his hair, and that was Jeff Goldblum again. And anyone who knows who that is? Kate Winslet.
Kate Winslet.
This was in her home in New York City, just a very natural, not made up, quiet afternoon portrait of her.
And I think what has also amazed me, not only the Denzel Washington story of them practicing random acts of kindness, but really the common thread through all of these photos was how kind and generous these movie stars were with their time and their money and their resources.
Well, I find, you probably heard the phrase, what comes around goes around, or you get what you give. And a lot of what I do in photography is I really try to give respect to the people. Unlike paparazzis who just are stalking, I try to really make it a process of respect. And I think that comes out in the results.
Absolutely.
So this is the young lady in the wheelchair on the left is my sister Patty, who lives in Florida, and she has a rare degenerative condition. She's quadriplegic, and they never really figured out what it is, but I've always tried over the years to give her many special moments as I could. And this was a moment when Cyndi Lauper was performing at a concert in Florida near where we live, and I took Patty and got her backstage and got this photo with her and Cyndi together. And this is another moment. This one took me 15 years to accomplish, of constantly trying. But it was when I was able to fly my mom and sister up to Chicago to meet with, have a private meeting with Oprah Winfrey. It took me 15 years to get that, to make that happen. And that's, okay, this is you want to say, Doug? Or?
Yeah, so I'm at my home in Idaho about a year ago, and I get a call from Robert. He said, Doug, I want you to talk to this woman, Khalilah Ali. I said, okay, why? Well, she's an aspiring speaker. She's got a rich and storied past and history, and she's Muhammad Ali's ex-wife. So I say, okay, have her call me. So she calls me. We have a wonderful discussion. I'm now her speaker coach, and I was in Florida where she lives about a month ago, and I had dinner with her, and while we were in the limo, my wife was with me, she takes the cell phone and says, take the phone, Doug, somebody wants to talk to you. So I go, hi, this is Doug. Hi, Doug, this is Muhammad. You know, he's obviously been riddled with Parkinson's, but that was one of my bucket list opportunities. And Khalilah and Robert paying an act of random kindness forward. So I was able to speak to Muhammad Ali. How many of you have heard of Muhammad Ali? One of the greatest boxers of all time and athletes. And so Robert now was at a UFC fight with her, and you can take it from there.
Yeah, we went to the UFC fights, and she was basically when people started finding out who she was, everyone wanted to be with her. But so this is just us together at a UFC fight in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Okay,
and now we actually get into the KINDSIGHT pieces, and you've got a copy of your book. Just refresh us, our memories with what exactly is KINDSIGHT, you know, capturing people, ordinary people, respecting people through the lens of your camera, and then the narrative behind it.
Well, yes. A lot of times since I started out as a movie photographer in 1990. That picture of George Clooney was my first job, but I've always been fascinated with, like, a lot of times when you're on a movie set, just the people in the neighborhood who are watching us, the real people, and you know, what's real. And so I've always been attracted to that. After 9/11 happened, that horrible moment, and I was sitting talking with a friend of mine, and we came to the realization that the antidote, or the antidote to terror, all the terror we were so inundated with, everything is terrorism. The antidote to terror was the richness of everyday life all around us, just the good acts and the goodness in people that's in everyday life. And you know, it's just around us, it's everywhere. And so that's when I began telling these stories. I was in Las Vegas. Do we have that picture up, the first one, Doug? This picture was an elderly gentleman and his wife that I met in Las Vegas, who were just low-income gamblers, and I took them out to lunch one day at this cafeteria, and while they were sitting across from me, I made this photo and I wrote a little story about it, and I emailed the story to, you know, all the people I knew, you know, several hundred people, and I got such a great response because it came from the heart, it was personal. And let me go back like 10 years before that. I met an artist who was from San Francisco, and in her statement that she had on the wall of her exhibit, she said this. She said, the more personal my expression, the more universal its meaning. In other words, if you just come from the heart, you're going to relate and people are going to connect with it. So that's one of the main things behind KINDSIGHT. I just began telling these stories, really personal stories of everyday life, and it got a really great response.
And what Robert can do, because of email and some laws about us emailing, you, what we can do is you can go to Robert's blog, but maybe what we can do is when Robert posts his twice or 3 times a month KINDSIGHT pieces, we can send Mr. Duncan a copy and he can then forward it on, but it's pretty cool. Give me the backdrop story here. So you took these people to lunch, and there's a rich story behind it. Can you share that with us quickly?
Well, it's I mean, I can read it, but basically Joseph was 64 and his wife is 70, and they met like 10 years before that, and he said it was love at first sight, even though she's older and she gets around in a wheelchair. And here it's just before Valentine's Day in 2002, and they're giving each other Valentines at the table. And so that's basically the story behind that. I'm sorry, Doug.
Tell us about Kevin here.
Yeah, Kevin, I told you I was in New Orleans in 2006, and just like I'm doing here with Doug, back then I always like to try, whenever I'm in a city working on a movie, I like to try to go to one or more schools and just, talk to students. And this was a school shortly after Hurricane Katrina. This was a Catholic school, a middle school there, that had been devastated. They were now having this assembly in the gym, and there were about 150 students. And my brother had said to me one time, he goes, listen, when you're talking to students, always make sure you call on the people in the back when they raise their hands. So this, I was opening to Q&A, questions from the students, and this young student was way in the back corner, and I called on him, and it was silence, like he was searching for his words. He was trying to find out what his question was, and everyone was very patient. They waited. So finally, after about a minute, he came out and he just said, Christopher Reeve. Does everyone know who Christopher Reeve is? He played Superman, and he got in an accident, became quadriplegic. So he said, Christopher Reeve was powerful as Superman, but he helped more people, and he was more powerful after he became injured. And I thought that was like a really profound statement for this young man. So I went back and sat next to him and found out that he has Asperger's syndrome, which is a form of autism. And that even, it was only like that year that he was even able to enter into the gym. He used to not even he was too afraid to go into a big room like that. So to this day, I'm friendly with his mom, and I keep track of him. Now he's 20, he's in college, he's driving.
Amazing.
So
this is a great story at, was it Whole Foods?
yeah, this is Whole Foods in Los Angeles. Yeah.
Great story here.
So Stephen was, working at Whole Foods, and he was stocking the shelves, organizing the shelves, and I came around the corner, and he said to me, can I help you find anything? And I just kind of joked with him. I said, well, how about the meaning of life? And without missing a beat, he said, oh, that's 2 aisles over in the small can in the middle shelf. So, and again, to this day, we're friends. And it's something I made up this phrase, I call it the power of hello. But it's just like saying hello to someone and you open up a conversation. And I just, spoke to him a few days ago. We're like buddies now.
Cool. How about this with Frank and the computer?
This is probably one of my favorite stories, because it's a story about how conflict can turn into a friendship. I had gone into Frank owned a little computer repair shop near me in Los Angeles, and I wanted to upgrade the RAM in my computer. And back in this time, this was 2004, so I had like 500 megabytes of RAM, and I wanted to upgrade it to 1 gigabyte. So I brought my computer in and I said, here, I want to upgrade. And he looked up my computer on his, my model number, and he said, okay, well, I have to get you another 500 megabytes of RAM, and come back in 2 days, and I'll order it and I'll install it for you. So I went back in 2 days, and I had paid him already, and he took my computer into the back, and he came out and he goes, okay, I installed it, I'm going to show you. And so I was expecting to see 1 gigabyte of RAM in my computer, but instead, it was right in between. It was 756. So I said, what happened? And he goes, oh, well, your computer had 2 slots for RAM, and there were 256K of RAM in there. So, I had to take one out and put the other in. I said, but, you know, you told me it was going to be up to one gigabyte. And he goes, well, you know, he goes, if you don't like it, I can take it out, but I'm going to charge you a $25 restocking fee. I said, no, you're not. And, you know, we started like arguing back and forth, and finally it got to the point where he goes, well, if you don't like it, take me to court. And I said, just give me my computer. And I walked out, and I was very angry. I felt bad that night about being angry, even though I felt I was right in my point about him not dealing with me fairly. But that night I felt, I called the store and I left a message on the machine. I said, listen, I don't think you did the right thing, but I feel bad about yelling at you, and I'm really sorry about that. Well, the next day I got a message on my machine from him, and he was like almost crying. And he said, you know, you shouldn't be apologizing to me, I should be apologizing to you. He goes, I was wrong, and I learned a valuable lesson. He goes, from now on when you come to my store, you're not going to be my customer, you're going to be my friend. And even like 2 years later, I went into the store, and he said, I still saved your message, and I still listen to it, and I play it for my kids, and they laugh at me. He goes, I wish I'd learned that lesson 20 years ago. So that's a story where potential enemy, now a friend.
Tell us about Jerry's Barbershop.
This was in San Francisco, and I had gone up there to San Francisco with a friend of mine, a buddy of mine who I'd met while working on Training Day. And my friend's name is Salam, and he's a big, heavy-set former gangbanger, is now a Muslim. And we were I was going up to San Francisco to do a book signing for this book, KINDSIGHT, at a bookstore, and I needed to get a haircut. We were both looking for a place to get a haircut. Well, you know me, I like to just go to Supercuts and pay $10 and get a haircut. Well, Salam had found this place, like he had asked someone on the street for a good barbershop, and this place, Jerry's, is in the hood, like in San Francisco. So we walk in there, and I'm a little nervous, because I'm like the only white guy in there. And Salam goes to the barbershop, the barbers, he goes, hey, do you guys cut straight hair? And each of them bragged, and the third guy on the right, Keenan, he bragged, he said, I'm so good, I don't even need scissors. So anyway, I ended up getting a really great haircut. I sent them I wrote this piece up and sent it to them, and that's the history of that.
Great. How about Margot? This is the day before she had brain surgery.
This was in 1999 in Miami, Florida. I was working on a film there, and this little girl and her dad, she was 7 at the time, and her dad were in Miami from Belgium. And you'll notice how her eyes are kind of enlarged. She had a condition where her brain was growing, but her skull wasn't. So it was actually literally forcing her eyes to bulge out of her head. And she was in Florida to have what was going to be the first of a number of operations to fix her up. And so this was the very day before that. And then this was 10 years later. I hadn't talked to them in 10 years, and I somehow reached out and connected with her dad and found out, that her brain surgeries had all gone successful. And now she was in New York and getting ready to become a student at New York University. So
that's what's really amazed me. You've kept in touch with a lot of the people that you've taken pictures of for the KINDSIGHT project.
Yeah. And this is my little sister Patty, and I just thought this was a really beautiful photo of. I would go into her room again. She's quadriplegic, so she's in a hospital bed most of the time. And every day I go in and we say prayers together. And this is her looking up, getting ready to pray. And this is a piece I call Wander Alert, because I don't know if any of you remember, but back shortly after 9/11, they had this thing called terror alerts, where you'd have to watch out. It's an orange alert because something might happen. Well, again, Wander to me is the opposite of terror. And so I wanted to say that this was just a piece I wrote about all the good things that happen every day on this planet, all the hugs that are given, all the kisses, all the acts of kindness that Doug was talking about.
Could you read it? It's really powerful.
Okay, let me see if I can read it from here. I'm going to turn around, guys, so I can face this. Okay, it's called Wander Alert. It's from August of 2004, and it says, the Planetary Wonder Agency has raised the global Wander Alert to Emerald, due to the following confirmed intelligence. Yesterday, there were 75 billion acts of kindness on the planet. 2 billion wounds were dressed. There were 38 billion hugs. 89 million doors were held open. 120 million people let others pass in traffic. I love you was said 44 billion times in over 200 languages. There were 1.2 million births among several thousand species. There were some 22 billion acts of benevolent teaching and learning, both in and out of schools. 87 million potentially violent actions were refrained from through changes of heart and mind. Over 300 billion known breaths were taken, and there were an estimated several trillion heartbeats. Be on the lookout and report all acts of wonder to everybody.
It's one of my favorite pieces.